Up first, the House Intelligence Committee's Russia investigation grinding to a halt over political infighting. The panel's embattled chairman saying that he is staying put, while the White House denies that it tried to block former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates from testifying.
Meanwhile, on the other side of Congress, you got the Senate Intel Committee, and everything seems to be going smoothly there. They're going to have their first open hearing on Russia tomorrow. The president is revisiting the health care battle. He's predicting it'll be easy to get a deal. He's also touting that the U.S. mission in Iraq is going, quote, very well. And he never mentioned the airstrike that just killed over 100 civilians in Mosul. Day 69 of the Trump presidency. What will it hold? Let's begin our coverage with Sarah Murray. Sarah.
Good morning, Chris. Well, bipartisanship has clearly hit a breaking point in the House. That Intelligence Committee is struggling with how to move forward with their investigation into Russia. And one thing is clear, the chairman of that committee and this White House are playing defense.
Are you going to stay as chairman and run this investigation?
Well, why would I not?
House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes defiant amid calls for him to step aside from the panel's Russia investigation.
Are you going to recuse yourself from this investigation? Is that a no?
The House Russia probe effectively put on hold as Democrats accuse the chairman of stalling.
The investigation certainly has ground to a halt, but here's the odd thing. All meetings have been canceled. We're apparently not going to do anything until this closed-door meeting with Comey and Rogers occurs.
Nunes now saying the investigation will move forward, but only after a private briefing with the FBI director and head of the NSA, which has not been scheduled. The chairman under scrutiny for canceling this week's open hearing, which was supposed to feature testimony from former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who was fired by President Trump.
It's evidence of a cover-up. There is no rational explanation for the cancellation of that meeting.
The White House fighting back against allegations that it sought to prevent Yates from testifying.
I hope she testifies. I look forward to it. If they choose to move forward, great. We have no problem with her testifying.
That's after the Washington Post published letters showing the Justice Department said Yates' testimony could violate presidential privilege, all on the same day that Nunes canceled the hearing.
Should Devin Nunes recuse himself from the Russia investigation? And two, do you know the source of his information?
No one knows.
Republican leadership standing by the House investigation despite growing criticism, with Congressman Walter Jones becoming the first Republican to suggest that Nunes step aside.
If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection.
Press Secretary Sean Spicer on the defensive, offering a colorful comeback to repeated questions about the Trump campaign's Russia ties.
It seems like you're hell-bent on trying to make sure that whatever image you want to tell about this White House stays. I'm sorry, please stop shaking your head again.
All as the president continues to deflect, repeatedly tweeting about Hillary Clinton and trying to shift the focus back to his legislative priorities after a bruising defeat on repealing Obamacare.
I know that we're all going to make a deal on health care. That's such an easy one.
Now, we're expecting the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee to hold a press conference later this afternoon. They've made it clear they would like to speak with Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, about his meetings with Russian officials. We're told that that will likely be testimony under oath, but likely held in private. This press conference later today should give us a better sense for the timeline and possibly this committee's next steps. Back to you guys.
Okay, Sarah, thanks so much for the reporting there. Meanwhile, battle lines drawn over Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. Democrats vow to filibuster. Republicans are considering using the nuclear option if they cannot get to 60 votes. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux has all the latest for us live on Capitol Hill. Good morning, Suzanne.
Hey, good morning, Allison. Well, it is game on now for the Supreme Court nomination. We heard from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is throwing down the gauntlet. He is saying that Monday is when the Senate Judiciary Committee will take up the vote for Gorsuch, and then that will set the stage for next Friday. He says not only will the vote happen, but he is predicting that he will be confirmed. This is leading to Democrats and Republicans scrambling to get to their positions. The Democrats say that they will filibuster. They've got 27 Democrats who say they're on board, 2 who say they are not going to do this. The Republicans on their side, of course, are looking for the 60 votes necessary to break the filibuster. They've got that 52 majority in the Senate. They are looking for 8 Democrats to join them, and specifically targeting about a dozen or so from the Trump-friendly red states. Those are the people that they want on their side. They are also willing, they say, to now use the nuclear option to change that rule, that threshold from 60 to 51 to break the filibuster. They want to make sure that Gorsuch gets an up or down vote.
And it's going to be a real uphill climb for him to get those 60 votes. If a judge can't meet, a nominee can't meet the 60 vote standard, you don't change the rules.
No Supreme Court justice has ever been stopped with a partisan filibuster. That is obviously what the Democratic leader has announced they will do. We are optimistic that they will not be successful.
The PR campaign on both sides is ramping up. Later today, 12:30, on the steps of the Supreme Court, there'll be members of the Senate Judiciary Committee as well as former clerks of Gorsuch to make the case that he's the one. Chris?
All right, appreciate it, Suzanne. Joining us now is Republican Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma. Senator, good to have you.
Hey, nice to be with you, Chris.
So, if they filibuster, the Democrats, should McConnell exercise the nuclear option?
Yes.
Are you concerned about the precedent that that sets?
Well, no, I'm really not, because it was unprecedented that you would change the rules to start with. He did that. And, you know, I was with Gorsuch yesterday. I've never been around a guy that is more qualified, and everyone agrees. Look, all of these guys that are complaining about him right now, they all voted for him to be at the 10th Circuit, and no one opposed him. And so right now it's a political game, right, and whatever is necessary. I would just say this, Chris.
Yes, sir.
He's going to be confirmed.
You know, just a point of fact on it, you know, Merrick Garland got an easy pass when he was put up for a judgeship also. He was unopposed. They will tell you, and you know this, Senator, it's very different measuring a man or a woman for Supreme Court versus an appellate or a district court. So there's a different appraisal process here, isn't there?
Well, no, the difference that I see is that he was put up during the tail end of an administration. Right now, this is the very first of an administration, and there's a lot of precedent for that someone in his last final months should not be making the determination as to who's going to be the confirmed nominee.
Wasn't it in January that Garland first came up, and it was just about the delay game?
Yeah. No, it was actually at a time frame when it would have actually set a precedent, and so we were on sound grounds, and I didn't have any problem with that particular nominee, but this one is the nominee. He will be confirmed.
You think Garland should have been given a vote or no?
Not.
Because that's what's playing into this, right? And you said, you pointed out earlier, Harry Reid set a precedent, true, but there was a carve-out for Supreme Court justices in that. So this would be, in fact, a new manifestation of the nuclear option.
Yeah, Chris, I would argue with you on that, because it's can you change the rules? Can you break the rules of the Senate? And that was the issue, not how far should it go. But they have the power to do that. He did it. And I remember when that happened, I thought that's going to come back and haunt him. That time is here.
That's what Mitch McConnell said at the time, was they will regret that they did this, and now this is the situation they're in. But one other thing, there are a lot of Democrats who do have opposition points to Gorsuch. They don't like the way he answered questions or what he failed to answer. They don't like some of his rulings. There is substantive resistance to him. It's not all political.
Well, I have to say this. The same ones, and a lot of them that I've heard making that statement, were the ones that didn't make the statement before. So he's already been there. He's already answered the questions. And I thought he did a fabulous job. I watched as much of it as I could. So let's just wait and see what happens. As I say, he's going to be confirmed. And I will, and America should be rejoicing.
All right, let's talk about the recent environmental rollback that the administration says will help the coal industry. Critics say that this is putting short-term economic interests in front of long-term environmental protection interests, and that you're not going to rebuild the coal sector anyway by rolling this back. Environmental restrictions aren't your problem. Innovation is your problem. Pricing around the world is your problem with why you don't have more coal jobs.
Well, Chris, I was listening to your previous guest, And I think he's really being a little bit generous. Let's keep in mind that this has been a war on fossil fuels. This has been Obama's war on fossil fuels that has endured longer than just the time that he was president. He started that a long time ago. Fossil fuels is not just coal, it's coal, oil, and gas. Now, he's thrown in there nuclear, too. Now, here's the problem that you have. Right now, our country is dependent upon nuclear, coal, oil, and gas for 89% of its ability to run this machine called America. Now, if he's successful in doing away with it, how do you run the machine called America? Secondly, you've got to keep in mind this thing that he did in Paris, and this is very significant for some reason. People either don't know about it or they don't care about it. But he made the statement that every country is going to say, what are we going to do with our own reduction of fossil fuels? He said, in the United States, I commit, we'll reduce fossil fuels by 27% by 2030. Well, three problems with that, Chris. First of all, it can't be done. We immediately went to the EPA. They agreed it can't be done. And then secondly, if you remember Lisa Jackson, who was the first nominee or the first confirmed director of the EPA under Obama, she said, well, it wouldn't make any difference anyway if you did it, because the problem is not in the United States. The problem is China and India and Mexico and other places. And the third thing is that the United States Supreme Court has stepped in and they agree with us. And so that is just not what he did. And I'm glad that the president did what he did. But insofar as the commitment that was made by Obama in Paris, it's meaningless.
Right, but look, I mean, taking all of your points as true for the sake of argument, this was about the ambition of being better, being cleaner, having more sustainable businesses, and transitioning away from those that are seen as having negative impacts on the environment. It wasn't simply to kill jobs. Obama wanted to replace jobs, a difficult task. And you seem to ignore that motivation here, that these industries can and do attribute to global warming and to the excesses of human behavior that add to global warming. And that's a big part of the motivation.
Well, see, I've argued this over and over again. Let's keep in mind the amount that would contribute to global warming, even by their own figures, and I'm talking about the EPA right now, would be 0.2%. It's not even measurable. So people who like to say that this is the major cause for global warming, first of all, this is a debate that's going on. Science is questioned and all of that. But the bottom line is, even if you're right, or if they are right, I think you're quoting them, it still doesn't make any difference.
Well, I mean, the science,
0.2%.
The scientific community doesn't have much of a debate about the bigger issue about the human impact of global warming. You know, you have an overwhelming majority of scientists.
I will argue that. I will argue that.
I know, but it doesn't mean that the facts are in your favor. I understand that you argue it. It doesn't mean that it's a compelling argument.
Well, it is a compelling argument, but we're not having it right now. I'd be glad to have it with you, because right now we have a lot of the really fine scientists are questioning this. In fact, they're even laughing about it. And we also
laughing about what?
No, I'll tell you what. The IPCC is the United Nations. That's the science that has been behind this. We all understand that. We also know that they have been totally discredited with ClimateGate. This happened in 2009, and you know, and I think everyone was understanding of that at the time. And right now, even though they've been totally discredited, they are the science that is behind this. And this is a different discussion altogether, because what happened yesterday is something that is not just a coal thing. It's trying to end the war on fossil fuels,
right.
And I think he's done it.
Well, I don't know. Those are your words, the war on fossil fuels. But isn't it kind of all related, that this is about moving away from industries that are seen as bad for the environment, as contributing to global warming, and trying to find new sources of energy and industries that could create jobs and be safer? I mean, in your own state of Oklahoma, you've seen negative impact from these industries, maybe affecting your own earthquake content.
Well, no, the president has been talking about this for a long period of time, and others have too. The bottom line, though, is you got to run the machine called America, and you can't do it without fossil fuels and nuclear. And this is something that everyone does understand. although they deny it. The president has been in denial, I'm talking about Obama now, for a number of years in trying to come up with something that says we can rely on renewable fuels. They're out there, the technology. Well, maybe someday it will be out there. Today it's not, Chris. They don't have the technology right now to run America without fossil fuels and nuclear.
And the larger question is, how do you ever get there if you don't ever start the process? But you're right, there are lots of big conversations to have on this issue, Senator, and you're always welcome here to have them on New Day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
Allison.
Okay, another big topic we're covering, the Trump administration targeting undocumented immigrants. Well, our next guest says the wrong people are being demonized. What does he mean? Congressman Luis Gutierrez joins us to explain.
Do you own a home or a condo? Then it's time you learn about American Residential Warranty.
Hi, I'm Anthony Sullivan.
And I'm Michelle Edmonds.
And we're here with important information
to serve. And so they don't want to.
It's a fact that undocumented immigrants are running around the messaging war when it comes to immigration. There is a perception, even the message. Okay. Congressman, always a pleasure.
This can make. Remember Colace and feel the difference a little softness can make.
The White House tackling immigration with a threat from Attorney General Jeff Sessions to sanctuary cities that they could lose federal funding if they don't enforce the laws. Immigrant communities living in fear of deportation, including those not convicted of violent crimes. Is this the start of a mass deportation force that candidate Trump promised? Let's discuss with Democratic Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Illinois. Congressman, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
So let's do this a little differently. My suggestion is this, that the Democrats have lost the messaging war when it comes to immigration. There is a perception, even though it is in defiance of fact, that undocumented immigrants are running around the country raping and killing. And cherry-picked cases, whether it's the Maryland rape that we just saw or that terrible murder in California some years ago, they loom large. Do you believe you have lost the messaging war?
Well, look, Chris, here's what I do. I wake up every morning and try to do the best job I can for the greatest number of people. I don't think we have. I think that in New York, Chicago, LA, and in cities across this country, we have mayors and police departments who say we cannot do our job if we lose the confidence of the people we are assigned to protect and to serve. And so they don't want to be immigration agents. And so I'm happy to be on this program, Chris, so that we can clarify some of the mischaracterizations.
Right.
Here's how I see it. Yeah, they call them sanctuary cities. What I would say, Chris, they're Fourth Amendment cities. Why do I say that? If you supply a warrant to the city of Chicago, right, we will absolutely honor that warrant. But you got to get a warrant. So think about it a moment. The DEA, the FBI, the ATF, they get warrants, right? They go and pick people up. What ICE, which is another federal law enforcement agency, does is it wants to have people detained and wants the city of Chicago to go after people without any probable cause being submitted before the court and without a warrant.
Well, but it's not always that way. It's not always that way, though, right? I mean, sometimes they'll say, if you get Chris Cuomo in your jail system, we have a warrant for him. He's here illegally, or he's wanted for whatever it is that falls under ICE's law enforcement jurisdiction. Give him to us. And it doesn't happen. And the rationale for why it doesn't happen is the one you're offering. We'll lose confidence in the communities. You don't hear that about the African-American communities. You know, you lose the confidence in those communities as well when you are hyper-vigilant about enforcement of law, but you still enforce the laws. You won't do it here. Why?
And here's, it's not that we don't enforce the law. I courteously disagree with you. We will enforce the law. If you supply a warrant, I will tell you they will hold that person in Cook County Jail and release that person to ICE. So you need to get a warrant, right? Because I think that's the basic thing. Don't expect, here's what they do to Chris. What they do is they call and they say, hold this guy. And what we've had is cases in the city of Chicago where somebody is held on Friday, only to find out Monday, after they've been held in jail all weekend, that they're a citizen of the United States of America and should never have been held in that jail.
Mistakes are made.
So
Mistakes are made. I hear you on that.
But more importantly is that they're not going after criminals. You have reported extensively in the city of Chicago, Mrs. Leno. Mrs. Leno reported for 12 years. She has 3 American citizen children, an American citizen husband. She's reported for the last 12 years dutifully. And now all of a sudden under the Trump administration, they say she's a danger to society and she has to leave in July of this year. That's wrong. That's
an issue, but it is a separate issue. Congressman, can you tell me, with all honesty and a straight face, that you don't believe that there are cases in this country in major cities that are called sanctuary cities where law enforcement just refuses to work with ICE because they don't want the PR issues, they don't want the added cost issues of holding people, they don't want the extra administrative issues of having to litigate cases that aren't specifically theirs, they're ICE's? Doesn't that happen?
Here's what it really is all about, Chris, is that we live in blended communities. I'll tell you real quickly, so when President Obama came to the city of Chicago, just to show you the depth of this, when the President came to the city of Chicago back in 2015, I took my grandson with me, Luis Andres. And Luis Andres said to President Obama, these were his new executive orders that possibly could give 5 million people legal status in the country. He said to the President, thanks a lot, because now my aunts and uncles can stay. So look, Chris, even in the Gutierrez household, there are obviously extended family members that my own grandson knows about. Why? Because he has classmates that are undocumented. Because we live in a blended community. It'd be simple to say that we lived in a caste society and those without papers live here and those with papers live over here. There are 5 million American citizen children, Chris, 5 million of them, whose parents are undocumented. We have a responsibility to protect the birthright of those children. And Chris, let's just fix the broken immigration system so that we no longer have to have this conversation. And lastly, I just want to say, those criminals, those illegal aliens that they talk about, guess whose impact? They're on my community, on my family. I don't want them in my community either. I want the Chicago police, the LA police to enforce the law, put them in jail, sanction them, and if they're here undocumented, to deport them from the United States of America. So let's just be clear that we are for law enforcement, protecting our communities against anyone, regardless of their immigration status. Because you're undocumented, we don't want to say, well, now you're in some special category that the police can't go after you. No, if you are a drug dealer, if you are someone who is doing harm to a community, the full force of the law should go against you.
And on the other side, they say just coming in illegally is enough. But it's a wide-ranging debate. It's going to continue. Thank you for making the case on New Day,
Thanks,
Congressman.
Chris.
Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris. Embattled House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes refusing to step down, insisting that his Russia investigation will go forward. Congressman Trey Gowdy, he's on that committee. He's here to tell us what he thinks about this and where the investigation goes next. The House Intelligence Committee's Russia investigation grinding to a halt over political infighting. Now, for the first time, a Republican lawmaker is calling on Chairman Devin Nunes to recuse himself from that Russia probe. North Carolina Congressman Walter Jones tells a reporter, quote, "How can you be chairman of a major committee and do all of these things behind the scenes and keep your credibility? If anything has shown that we need a commission, this has done it by the way he has acted. The integrity of the committee looking into this has been tainted." Nunes says he is not going anywhere. So let's bring in one of the Republicans on the Intel Committee, and that is South Carolina's Trey Gowdy. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Do you agree with your colleague that your committee has been tainted?
No, ma'am. What I want our committee to start doing is working, which is interviewing witnesses and accessing documents. And all of this politics, I'm sure, is interesting to the viewer. But if you want to find out those 4 tranches, those investigative tranches with respect to Russia, we need to start interviewing witnesses and accessing documents and let the politics kind of go away.
Isn't that the problem right there? I mean, as you've just spelled it out, because of everything that's going on with Chairman Nunes, everything has been stalled this week. In fact, one of your Democratic colleagues, Jim Himes, says that you're in deep freeze mode. Doesn't that tell you that he needs to recuse himself?
Well, I'm smiling because I don't know when Congress not doing something for a week was deep freeze mode. That's not unusual up here that we would have a week where we didn't have a whole lot to show for it.
But you were scheduled. Hold on one second, Congressman. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were scheduled to do interviews and to hold hearings. Sally Yates was supposed to appear, Jim Comey, but that, for whatever reason, Chairman Nunes indefinitely postponed it or canceled it. So what's going on?
Well, I think that for whatever reason, it's really important. You saw the hearing last Monday where almost 100 times the two witnesses said, I cannot answer in this forum. So why you would go back to a forum where the seminal witnesses can't answer the question is befuddling to me. I want to talk to Sally Yates. Sally Yates is an important fact witness. We're going to talk to Sally Yates. The fact that we didn't do it this Tuesday doesn't mean we're not going to do it next Tuesday.
But why didn't you do it this
Tuesday? We're about
Tuesday?
a week behind. We're about a week behind. But if we start next week, we can catch up.
I hear you, but you could have done it in a closed meeting. Why not do it this week?
I think it's important that we talk to Comey and Rogers again first. They really are, Allison, the two most important witnesses, at least with 3 of the 4 tranches. And when you answer 100 times, I can tell you, but I can't tell you in this forum, then why would you not bring back the 2 seminal witnesses to say, okay, we're in a different forum. Answer those almost 100 questions, and then we'll move to Clapper, and then we'll move to Brennan, and then we'll move to Ms. Yates. Okay. That is the natural chronology, and that's what I hope we do.
You make a great point. Why didn't it happen this week in a closed forum? It was scheduled, and then it was canceled.
Well, you mean Rogers and Comey. I think it's really important that we talk to them again. I'm not privy to their calendars. They came last Monday. Perhaps they could not come this week, but it is, in my judgment, indispensable that we talk to the 2 seminal witnesses again, see what questions they can ask. That's then going to lead to different questions for Ms. Yates and Brennan and Clapper. So there's always a natural chronology in an investigation. I like to go chronologically. I like to start with the seminal witnesses, and then they can identify other witnesses. I don't know what Director Comey and Admiral Rogers scheduled. They're 2 really important, busy guys. The fact that they could not come back-to-back weeks before Congress and spend 6 hours before us does not surprise me. But I expect them to come, and I expect them to come quickly.
And so Congressman, if Chairman Nunes shared sensitive information with the very source of the investigation, meaning the president and the White House, doesn't that compromise him?
Well, you're making an assumption that I don't make. Actually,
What do
you're
you
making
think
2
he
that
should?
I
Well,
don't
I mean,
make.
look, let me be clear. We know he went to the White House and told the president something. And
right, and we have no idea it has anything to do with Russia. In fact, Devin has said it had absolutely nothing to do with Russia. So if the new rule is that the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee cannot share information with the commander-in-chief, we're in a whole new world, Allison. If that's the new rule, Devin says it had nothing to do with Russia. I have no reason to doubt him. So if it's got nothing to do with Russia, then no, the White House is not the target of the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Have you asked Chairman Nunes what he was doing, why he did this?
I have, and he reminded me of what I did in a former life, where I relied on sources. I had a federal witness killed that I relied on, and I'm not over-dramatizing this, but you do protect your sources. You do it in your line of work. Devin has to do it. They're whistleblowers. They're other people who have relevant, authentic, credible information, and they want to share it. You protect your sources. Devin is protecting his. He's protecting it so much he's not even telling us who it is. But I would say this, Allison, shouldn't we be more interested in the authenticity and the reliability of the underlying information, whether it's the gardener or the cook or someone else, is secondarily important. The authenticity and reliability is what's most important to me of the underlying information.
Well, sure. And so what is I mean, that's what you're trying to get to the bottom of, right? Is what are the connections? Are there these ties between the Trump campaign, the Trump team, and Russia? So how are you getting to the bottom of that?
Two separate lines of inquiry. What Devin went to the White House about has nothing to do with Russia. So put that in a separate track. I was ready yesterday to start interviewing witnesses, all of them. I want to sit down with Adam Schiff and say, Adam, give me your list of witnesses. Let's do it together. Let's interview them together. We're both former federal prosecutors. Let's find the facts and the truth together. Give me your witness list. I'll give you mine. Let's start doing it in the forum that is most conducive with gathering the most amount of information But Allison, the trip to the White House that Devin took had nothing to do with Russia. So let's don't conflate the trip with the investigation.
Congressman Trey Gowdy, we appreciate your insight and you being here with all that information. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Chris.
All right, just ahead, Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, did not like the question, and the rest is viral history. The one and only April Ryan tells us about this fiery exchange in the bottom line.
No time to wash and wax? Now there's Armor All Wash Wipes with Lift and Clean technology. Tomorrow,
The travel ban on hold or suspend.
About Entresto and help make the gift of tomorrow possible.
5 things to know for your new day. Brought to you by Novartis.
Time now for the 5 things to know for your new day. House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes refusing to recuse himself from the Russia investigation as the committee's probe grinds to a halt because of political infighting.
Republicans preparing to go nuclear as the showdown over Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch heats up. More Democrats announcing their intention to filibuster.
The top U.S. commander in Iraq says there is a fair chance a U.S.-led coalition airstrike killed scores of civilians in Mosul earlier this month. The general also believes ISIS put innocents in the way.
A federal judge in Hawaii who blocked President Trump's revised travel ban holds a hearing today. He is expected to decide whether to keep the travel ban on hold or suspend his order.
The entire White House staff announcing that they will skip next month's White House Correspondents' Dinner in solidarity with the president. Mr. Trump saying earlier he's not going.
More food for us.
For more on the 5 things to know, go to newdaycnn.com for the latest.
All right, meanwhile, we have to tell you what's coming up. Reporter April Ryan, she was in the hot seat yesterday. She got a bit of a dressing down, get it, from Sean Spicer at the White House press briefing. So we are going to have her here with her reaction for the bottom line next.
But first, we have the story of an orphan abandoned in China, now a young woman using dance to show that beauty has no bounds. Here's her story in this week's Turning Points.
I'm Lonnie Dickinson, and I'm a professional dancer. I was born in Tongxi Town, China. I was taken to the orphanage then. I believe I was 3 days old when I was found at the doorstep. I was born with a quarter of an arm. I was 13 months of age when I was adopted. Coping with staring and rude comments or their doubt in my abilities, I definitely had to develop a resilience. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was 8 years old. My mom, she put me into ballet training to build more muscle for my back and also help my posture. I fell in love with dance almost immediately.
5, 6, 7, 8.
And that's when I feel like I found my own voice. My dream was to travel and dance. I was accepted into the Axis Dance Company. We have both disabled and non-disabled dancers. I hope that I'm inspiring others by performing for them. If they've hit an obstacle in their life, I hope to inspire on how to overcome that obstacle.
Journalist April Ryan getting into a heated exchange with Press Secretary Sean Spicer yesterday. Here is.
You got Russia, you got wiretap, and you got.
No, we don't have that. I don't.
On Capitol Hill.
No, I get it, but you keep. I've said it from the day that I got here until whatever that there is no connection. You've got Russia. If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection. But every single person. No, that's. I appreciate your agenda here, but the reality is. Oh no, hold on. No, at some point, report the facts. The facts are that every single person who has been briefed on this subject has come away with the same conclusion. Republican, Democrat. So I'm sorry that disgusts you. You're shaking your head. I appreciate it, but understand this: that at some point the facts are what they are. It seems like you're hell-bent on trying to make sure that whatever image you want to tell about this White House stays, because at the end of the day, let me answer. Okay, but you know what? You're asking me a question, and I'm going to answer it, which is the president. I'm sorry. Please stop shaking your head again.
He was actually moving his head while he was telling her not to shake his head.
Yes, I noticed that.
For what it's worth, fair play.
Here now with us, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks and author of the book At Mama's Knee, April Ryan. Good morning, April.
Good morning, Allison. How are you?
I'm doing well. What was going through that head of yours when Sean Spicer was wagging his finger and shaking his head?
Disbelief. I was just asking a question, trying to get an answer, and I found myself trying to defend myself. But, you know, I'm a reporter just trying to get answers, and it was a simple question. It was a legitimate question, and I just wanted an answer. And I dropped my head. I didn't shake my head at first. And I reviewed the tape. I did shake my head towards the end in disbelief. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm a reporter. He's a press secretary, and we both have jobs to do. I'm going back today to do my job, and he's going to do his job, and I take it for what it is. And as an administration is calling us the enemy of the people, I guess we saw some of that thought process yesterday.
I do not think you needed to review the tape to see whether or not you were shaking your head. I think you're allowed to shake your head whenever you want, especially when Spicer is doing what he does most often right now, which was giving a bogus response to your question. You know, you said you got wiretapping, you got Russia, and he goes, no, 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 you do. Look, we all know where the wiretapping thing came from. That was the premise for your question, and you asked it. He didn't like it, and that was the treatment that you got. Do you believe what he did to you, April, is different than what he does to other reporters?
Well, let me say this. There was a young lady from Politico over the weekend, a white woman, who was called an idiot by Sean. It made headlines. We are the press who's under attack. We are under attack by this administration. It's about discrediting credible media. And, you know, at this point, I happen to be a black woman, but I'm part of the press. So this is, I guess this is part of a series of 2 women this week who have been in the news over something with the press secretary.
And do you think he treats women differently in the press room?
You know, I just know how he deals with me. I'm not sure yet, because, I mean, when he first came out, I was one of the 5. I was, I think, the 5th person that he called on the first day of the press briefing. I'm going to watch more so closely now. I just know that there are attacks on the press, but I'm going to watch more so closely. And I mean, I just see from the weekend that reporter from Politico, who he called an idiot, and then this situation. It's showing a pattern, at least this week. But yeah, I mean, they have made attacks on the press. I'm saying overarching, the attacks on the press have happened. But now I'm looking more closely, thinking about what you're saying at the issue of women.
The bad fact for them, where you, April, are involved, is that the president asked you to set up a meeting with the Black Caucus, which I thought was one of the more awkward moments we've seen in there. You handled it very well. I don't know if you reached out to try to set up the meeting or not.
I did not. I did not. Not at all.
I didn't expect you to.
Scheduler, you know?
But I thought that
I'm a reporter.
I thought that was more of a, I wonder if this would have happened to somebody who looked like me instead of like April in that exchange. Did you see that one as different with the president?
Again, when he said that, and this is when I just, nothing else registered after he said set up the meeting, because I looked at that as impropriety. And I'm like, I can't do that. I can't set up a president with government. Now, what I will tell you is I will set up a meeting with the president and reporters. We've had tongs like that. We all look for tongs, off-the-record meetings with presidents or newsmakers and reporters to find out what's going on. But I cannot, I will not set up a meeting for government officials and the White House. That is just not right at all for me.
April, quickly, do you feel as though there's more of a personal attack from Sean Spicer when he calls somebody an idiot, when he says to you, stop shaking your head? Is that, I mean, look, there's always been an adversarial relationship between the press secretary and the press, but is there something on a deeper, more personal level happening now?
It's a tough one, and I want to believe that Mike McCurry said, the former press secretary for Bill Clinton, he said there's a friendly adversarial relationship. I believe the friendly piece is gone now, as you said, Allison. It is getting personal, but it should never get personal in that room. It should be about the issues. I have no agenda, you know, calling people out of their name. I mean, if you get personal, it could go back and forth for days, and it's not about the issues, and it's about the issues. This is the White House. This is the home, the workspace of the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. People want to know what he's thinking, what he's doing. I cover all things presidential. It's not about me, but if it becomes about me, it's a sad day. Or any other reporter, it is about the issue for the American people. We cover the President of the United States for the American people. It's not about us, it's about you, the people. It's just, it's turning into a different day.
Well, you get a big amen about that from a lot of people, certainly your brothers and sisters in the media. But interesting, what's your take on this? The president tweeted, hey, you know, if only people could see in our great country how viciously and inaccurately my administration is covered by the media. Do you think that those adjectives are applying more to the White House press secretary these days than it is to the media in terms of accuracy, which Spicer has struggled with, and that's a generous assessment, and the kind of personal attacks that you, the Politico reporter, our Jim Acosta, you know, that we see on a regular basis that have a feel of viciousness to them?
Jim is a great reporter. I love Jim Acosta. First of all, there is a lot of credibility issues when it comes to this administration, but that's where the press comes in, and we have to cover the issues and get all sides of the story. It's not just two sides, all sides of the story, to find out what is and what is real versus fake. Now, when it comes to fake news, oh yeah, there are some fake news organizations out there reporting on them, also supporting some of the spin that's offered from this White House and maybe other White Houses. But I will tell you this too as well. You know, in that room that I've been sitting in for 20 years, and to see it recently, you just wonder about some of the people that are coming in the room now. Are they really journalists, or are they spectators posing as journalists? So there's a lot of stuff going on in that room right now, and in this mosh that we call reporting at the White House right now. The dynamic has changed, but there is fake news out there. But I'm going to say those who have covered the White House, who are covering credible, credentialed journalists who come there every day, are doing their jobs. And I'm telling you, it's a fight, and it should not be this way. But I'm telling you, I stand by the First Amendment and those journalists who are in there covering this president and other presidents.
April Ryan, keep up the good work. Thank you so much for being with us to talk about all of this morning.
All right, CNN Newsroom with Poppy Harlow and John Berman begins right after the break. Stay with CNN.
He's a NASCAR champion who's faced thousands of drivers. She's a world-class swimmer who stared down the best in her sport. But for both of them, the most challenging opponent was
PE blood.
Nunes step aside.
That's exactly.
Who canceled this week's schedule between Russia.
Good morning, everyone. 9 a.m. Eastern. I'm Poppy Harlow.
I'm John Berman. So what House intelligence investigation? This morning, there is no House intelligence investigation into possible ties between Russian officials and Trump associates, at least as far as we can tell. No public hearings, no private testimony, no meetings, no nothing. Unless you're counting controversy, and there is plenty of that. The embattled House Intelligence Chair, Devin Nunes, who canceled this week's schedule, is now dogged by a new allegation that he blocked the testimony of former acting Attorney General Sally Yates because the White House demanded it. Now, the Trump administration denies that. So does Devin Nunes, for that matter. Meanwhile, one House Republican has now joined the Democrats' calls that Nunes step aside.
That's exactly right. In the Senate, the intelligence probe, though, is moving ahead without the paralysis of this partisan bickering in the House side. Members of both parties will hold a news conference today to update us on the progress. And is President Trump breathing new life this morning into the GOP's failed repeal effort of Obamacare? Well, he told a bipartisan group of senators last night that he is ready to make a deal and that it will be, quote, so easy. Let's begin, though, with the Trump-Russia investigation. Sarah Murray is at the White House with the latest on that. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Devin Nunes, the head of that House Intelligence Committee, says no more hearings until they hear privately from the heads of the FBI as well as the head of the NSA. Now, of course, this is causing a lot of concern among some Democrats on the committee. Listen to what one of them, Congressman Jim Himes, said this morning on New Day.
This isn't a partisan criticism. You know, you've got Lindsey Graham and John McCain and others saying, I've never seen anything quite like this. And a lot of us have a lot of, a lot of history with Chairman Nunes and consider him a friend. But, until we really get read into whatever drove last week's behavior, it's a little hard for us to, along with the rest of the American public, not make some assumptions about what is driving this very strange behavior.
Now, a number of Democrats have said it's time for Nunes to step aside from this investigation, believing essentially that he's colluding with the White House. But it's not just Democrats making this call. Now there's one Republican, Congressman Walter Jones, who also said Nunes should step aside. Now, there was another former administration official we were expecting to hear from in hearings this week, and that's former acting Attorney General Sally Yates. But now the White House is facing criticism amid allegations that they tried to block her from testifying. This is something that the White House is vehemently denying. Listen to what Sean Spicer said about this yesterday.
On the 24th, Ms. Yates' attorney sent a letter to the White House counsel requesting that consent, specifically stating that if they did not receive a response by March 27th at 10 a.m., they would, quote, conclude that the White House does not assert executive privilege over these matters. The White House did not respond and took no action that prevented Ms. Yates from testifying. I hope she testifies. I look forward to it.
Now, the White House says they're looking forward to it, to be determined if it actually happens. Obviously, things have ground to a halt in terms of the House investigation. The Senate investigation still continuing. We may get an update on what their next steps are at that press conference later today. Back to you guys.
All right, Sarah Murray at the White House, thanks so much. Joining us now is Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. He's a Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, you know, your committee has canceled public hearings this week, private hearings this week. You've even canceled your regular meetings. As it stands right now, 9:03 a.m. on the East Coast, is there actually a House intelligence investigation into Trump association ties with Russia?
Oh, no, there absolutely is. And at this point in time, I think it's time for the chairman to take a step back, reassess, and say, okay, we're going to reschedule that public meeting, and we're going to continue to schedule those private meetings, whomever he wants to invite. If it's Director Comey and Chairman Rogers, that's fine. But this investigation is too important to slow down. It has to move forward. It's been a rough week, but on a bipartisan basis, we can work together.
You say that, and Devin Nunes yesterday said, you know, on our air, look, we're moving forward. Why would I recuse myself? Things are moving forward. He sent a letter then to FBI Director Comey once again yesterday, inviting him to come back and testify. He signed the letter. His Democratic counterpart, Adam Schiff, the ranking member, did not sign the letter. How is that working together?
Yeah, the only thing I heard was that when it came to signing a letter, it had to do with asking Mr. Comey to be there at the same time we were having the public meeting. So in a sense, what the ranking member would be asked would be to understand and agree that we should cancel the public meeting. The fact that the chairman decided that was the only time to have Mr. Comey and Mr. Rogers in is not a coincidence. They simply don't want that public meeting. They simply don't want Ms. Yates to testify. And if they let her eventually, gosh, that'd be great. I'd love to have that move forward. But unfortunately, they've played some games the last 8 days. And what we see with the White House is the beginning, they're starting to put the bricks up to build some sort of bunker.
All right, let's break down what you said, because it seems like you're saying you're okay having the FBI director come in private. Then you brought up former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who was supposed to testify in public. That testimony was canceled. The Washington Post claimed that it was after White House, or at a minimum, administration pressure. That's something that the administration, Sean Spicer, everyone flatly denies. Have you seen any evidence that the administration pressured your committee to cancel the hearings?
I think what was interesting is I don't think Chairman Nunes denied the fact that the White House pressured to cancel that meeting. I mean, look, this hasn't gone well for them. The first public meeting, Director Comey said there is an investigation. The fact is that the Russians conspired to help
I'm
Mr.
pretty
Trump's
sure, by
campaign.
the way, that Chairman Nunes and his staff said that they had no conversations with the White House at all about